Moments later, they heard faint whispers as though the trees themselves were speaking. "Did you hear that?" Bose asked, grabbing Fumi's arm. Suddenly, a shadow moved in the corner of their eyes. Kemi screamed as a figure of a tall headless man in tattered clothes appeared ahead. The girls froze and they were rooted in terror. "Run!" Adetutu shouted, breaking the spell. They turned to flee, but the path they had entered was no longer there. The forest had shifted, trapping them in its green maze. It was the peak of a dry season when 5 young NYSC members arrived in Ajili, a serene village surrounded by dense forests. The corpers Adetutu, the bold leader, Fumi, who was always curious and cheerful, Shade, the quiet observer, Bose, the warrior, and Kemi, the free spirit, had been posted to teach at the local community school. The villagers welcomed them warmly, throwing a small feast in their honor. At the feast, Oba Ajibade, the village king, addressed the visitors with kind but firm words. "You are welcome to Ajele village, where we value peace and tradition. However, I must warn you, my daughters," he said, while pointing towards the direction of what seemed like a forest. "Never set foot in the Igboro, the forbidden forest. The gods dwell there, and their wrath is unforgiving." The corpers exchanged glances while listening to the king's warning. Later that night, while sitting in their lodge, Adetutu scoffed at the tale. "These are just stories to scare children. Every village has its myths." But the king seemed serious, Bose whispered nervously. Fumi chuckled. "Maybe we should just check it out before we leave. Just a little adventure." Shade, who was always conscious, shook her head. "It is better to respect their culture." Oh. But Adetutu was determined. "Think of the stories we would tell when we get back home. We came here to explore and not to sit around, you know." Days passed and the warning of the strange forest hung like a shoulder over time. However, Adetutu's curiosity spread among the group like wildfire. Fumi was eager, Kemi loved the thrill, and even the hesitant Bose eventually agreed. Shade remained wary but reluctantly joined, unwilling to let her friends face the unknown alone. On the morning of their ill-fated decision, they coerced little Tenny, a playful village girl, to show them the path to the forest. Tenny hesitated at first. "No, my mama says Igboro is not for humans." But after a few sweets and promises of friendship, she relented, pointing to a narrow path hidden by dense trees. "Thank you, Tenny," Adetutu said with a grin as they entered the forest. "We will be back before anyone notices." The moment they stepped into Igboro, the forest seemed alive. The air grew silent and sunsets dimmed. And there was suddenly a silence. Bose shivered. "I don't think we should be here." "Stop worrying, Jare," Adetutu replied confidently, though even her voice had started to waver a little bit. Unbeknownst to them, the forest gods had already sensed their presence. The deeper they ventured into the forest, the more unnatural their surroundings became. The path twisted like a serpent. The trees loomed higher, their branches curling like claws. "Adetutu, let's go back," Shade urged, her voice trembling. "Oga, relax. We have come this far. Let's just see where it leads," Adetutu insisted. Moments later, they heard faint whispers as though the trees themselves were speaking. "Did you hear that?" Bose asked, grabbing Fumi's arm. Suddenly, a shadow moved in the corner of their eyes. Kemi screamed as a figure of a tall headless man in tattered clothes appeared ahead. The girls froze and they were rooted in terror. "Run!" Adetutu shouted, breaking the spell. They turned to flee, but the path they had entered was no longer there. The forest had shifted, trapping them in its green maze. For hours they wandered, their panic growing. Bose fell to her knees, sobbing. "This is all your fault, Adetutu. We should have listened to the warning." "Shut up, my friend, and keep moving," Adetutu snapped, although her voice was now trembled with fear. Night fell quickly, and the forest was in darkness. Strange noises echoed around them. A woman wailing, drums beating faintly, the laughter of unseen children, and when they tried to light their torch, the flame flickered and died, as though put off by an invisible hand. Then it happened. Fumi, too weak to walk, sat by a tree. "I cannot go on," she whispered. Suddenly, her scream split the air as the ground beneath her seemed to swallow her up. The others ran, but there was no escape. Adetutu fell into a shallow pit, her ankle twisting painfully. Kemi and Shade tried to help, but an icy wind roared, pinning them to the ground. The whispers grew louder, deafening their cries for help. Meanwhile, back in the village, little Tenny had confessed to her mother what happened earlier. The news spread like wildfire, reaching Oba Ajibade. "Summon the chief priest," he commanded. "We must appease the gods before it is too late." The villagers gathered with lanterns and drums, chanting prayers as the chief priest performed sacred rites. He tossed cowries into the sand and shook his head gravely. "They have angered the gods. If they are to return, it will not be without consequences." It took 2 days before the villagers found the corpers. They lay unconscious at the edge of the evil forest, as though the forest itself had spit them out. The village healers carried them to the palace, where they were nursed back to life. When Adetutu woke, she tried to move but couldn't. Her legs were paralyzed. Beside her, Fumi was awake but stared blankly into space, her voice gone. Bose's right arm was twisted unnaturally, and Kemi's face bore dark scars. Only Shade seemed physically unhurt, though her mind was fractured, replaying the horrors of the forest. Oba Ajibade looked at them with pity. "You were warned, though, but you chose to defy the gods. This is the price of disobedience, and the price of disobedience is heavy." The chief priest stepped forward. "The spirits have marked you. You must remain in Ajile village forever, because the forest has claimed you as its own." Tears streamed down Adetutu's face, and reality sank in. They could never return home and could never see their families again. The villagers, though forgiving, completely avoided them, whispering about the cursed corpers who had angered Igboro. Over time, the story of the 5 young women became a cautionary tale passed down through generations. The children of Ajele village learned to respect the forest and its mysteries, knowing that some boundaries must never be crossed. And so, Adetutu and her friends remained in the village, living quiet lives marked with regrets. They became living reminders of the forest's wrath, a tale to teach that some rules, no matter how trivial they seem, are never meant to be broken. The moral of this story is that obedience and respect for traditions are virtues that protect us from unseen dangers. Some warnings actually exist for a reason. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more captivating stories.